Ciao everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As you can see by the title, we are doing 3 super quick and easy, cozy and delicious Mediterranean diet soups today. Soups, stews, basically a bowl of comforty goodness. I was inspired to do this soup and stew recipe video because I've gotten a lot of requests for soups and stews. It's cold and it's gray and we need yummy, very vibrant, very easy, delicious soups and stews. And I just did a meal prep video and I have so many of the ingredients left over. I have so many of the dishes that I made during that meal prep video left over. I think it's so fun to show how I can intertwine so many of my recipes, and so that you guys feel that you can intertwine recipes and you can use up what you already have, and the variations are endless. Of course, as always, I will include all the ways to change it to fit your preferences. The first one is going to be a very rich and creamy roasted pear and chestnut soup. I brought home, well, my mom, brought home chestnuts from Italy, and I'm so excited to use them. I think they're so underrated here in America. I don't think we use them enough. So we're gonna roast those chestnuts, roast those pears, and blend it all up with a can of chickpeas to add protein and that creaminess and keep it dairy-free. The second recipe is going to be about mushrooms and some smokiness, and it's gonna use the delicious lentil and barley recipe that I recreated for the second time in my meal prep video. And I just wanna show you again the endless ways to use this recipe of those lentils and barley, because it's such a delicious thing, and there's so many different ways to use it, and I just want to show you guys that. So there's going to be a lot of warm, cozy spices. So we have this very hearty mushroom, lentil, and barley stew. And then lastly, going back to my roots, my sweet nonna makes minestrone weekly. I grew up eating minestrone. I think it's like literally a staple comfort meal for me. Making a version of minestrone today with a lot of root vegetables. You can intermix any of the winter vegetables here. All these winter vegetables that you don't know what to do with, the minestrone is for you. So those are the 3 different soups and stews that we're gonna be making in this video. I'm so excited to get started and share these delicious recipes with you. So let's hop into recipe number 1. For the first soup, we are gonna work with the chestnuts, and you just wanna make a big cross onto the skin of the chestnut, but make sure not to cut through into the chestnut. And so basically you just wanna do that to all the chestnuts. First, we're gonna roast these, and then we'll roast everything else. But the chestnuts are just different, so they need to roast on their own. But since we already have the oven on, we're basically gonna do the whole soup in the oven instead of in a pot. So it is a little time consuming. You 100,000% can buy chestnuts already peeled and even cooked. And I will promise you that your kitchen will smell delicious after you roast these chestnuts. I've made my crosses on all of the chestnuts, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop these into the oven. I have 2 beautiful, very ripe, in the sense of when you push them, they give when you push into them, and they make a little dent. So 2 beautiful Barley pears, 1 celery stalk. I'm using a yellow carrot. You could use an orange carrot. I'm using a sweet little shallot, and then a nice garlic clove. What I love about this is a couple things. 1, you don't have to peel the carrot. 2, you don't have to do any like really fine chopping, because we're gonna blend this all up and everything's just going on a roasting pan and we're not sauteing it. So we can keep things pretty big and chunky. It's like 1.5 inch pieces, so like a medium-sized carrot. Celery, you want it about roughly the same size as the carrot, because we want everything to cook at the same time. I'm gonna leave the garlic whole so that it doesn't burn. I'm just gonna crush it and then take off this peel. There we go, off the peel you come. So next, we're gonna cut the pear right along the inside where the seeds are, and you kind of wanna just have this much remaining because you really don't wanna eat that part. We're gonna work on the shallot, cut the top and the bottom off, and then just cut it into 4s. So with the vegetables and the pears on the roasting tray, we're also going to add sage, and then we're also gonna do about 8 or 10 sprigs of thyme, and we're just gonna throw that on the tray with everything to roast, as well as an entire can of chickpeas. You don't have to use chickpeas, you could also use white beans. I already have a recipe, think a butternut squash and white bean soup. So I thought I'd mix it up with the chickpeas. I wanted to add some protein, some body, keep it dairy-free, keep it vegan. So I've pulled the chestnuts from the oven, and it's time to go in with the rest of the ingredients, almost all the rest of the ingredients. For this soup, I'm going to drench it with some delicious extra virgin olive oil all on top here. You want it to be very well coated. Giant pinch of salt. We want a ton of flavor. Then I'm gonna just give everything a good toss. Make sure all of the vegetables and the pears and the herbs are covered in the olive oil, as well as the salt. Beautiful tray is ready. I'm gonna throw this in the oven at 425 for about 20 minutes. Give it a stir, and we're gonna add a few more ingredients. And now I have my tray of chestnuts. 1 exploded in the oven. because I didn't cut it well enough for it to pop open. So that's why you want to make sure to cut them really well and get in there with a sharp knife, because if you don't, they will explode. And they've just slightly cooled, and I'm gonna go ahead and handle them. If they're too hot, you can let them cool a little bit longer and they just come right off. So as you can see, you just so easily take the shells off them. Sometimes the furry skin might want to stick a little bit. They have a few crevices here and there on the back, and you just kind of want to make sure nothing has stuck. The flavor is incredible. So I'm gonna spend the next 10 minutes doing this, put on some music, relax, keep smelling the beautiful smells of these chestnuts, and then we'll check on the other things in the oven. They look incredible. They definitely have gotten a lot of color, and I'm gonna give them a little toss because we wanna make sure everything gets super brown. I'm just gonna pour about 1/4 cup of wine. Oh, the wine smells so good. I'm getting like a wine roasted goodness facial right now. And so I'm gonna throw this back in for another 10 minutes, and then it will be perfect and ready to blend. Yum. It is time to blend everything up for this beautiful pear chestnut chickpea soup. We're gonna go in with an ingredient you maybe saw coming, you maybe didn't, a little bit of maple syrup, about 2 tablespoons. This is totally optional, you guys just know I love savory sweet. I'm actually gonna go in with a smidge more. And to complement all the nuttiness and just goodness and the pear and everything, I wanted to include some maple syrup. Next, I'm gonna go in with the chestnuts. I have the tray here of the beautiful roasted goodness. I'm gonna remove the sprigs of thyme. The sage has definitely done its job. So I'm just discarding all the herbs. I think that's it. I think we got all the thyme. We made time to get rid of the thyme. Very slowly, so I don't spill the beautiful, ingredients into the blender, and making sure you get a rubber spatula or something so that you can scrape off all of the good stuff on the bottom of this tray, because you don't want to lose it, and get all the juices. Oh, chickpeas, please. Get all the chickpeas that ran away from me. And the very last ingredient will be your vegetable broth. Good news is I already tried this incredible soup. Bad news is it's not the most beautiful. The color, unfortunately, chickpeas, chestnuts, pears, all the colors didn't turn out great, but I can confirm it tastes incredible. So good. It's so good. Once you blend it all up, you can either be a super lazy, just throw it in the microwave, or you can add it to a big pot and warm it up and kind of let it simmer in a pot. I don't really want you to have to dirty up a pot too, but that's just an idea. The chickpeas and the chestnuts together make it so thick. It is a thick, thick mixture. Oh, it's like 300 times better when it's warm, and you can taste the wine and all the herbs. Super nutty. This is fabulous. This is so good. This is so thick and creamy without any dairy. So let's keep this cozy theme going, because it's only getting more and more gray outside, and move on to recipe number 2. To the bottom of this beautiful pot, we're going to add about 2-3 tablespoons of olive oil. You just want to coat the bottom of the pot. And then I'm going to place it over the stove at medium heat. I wanted to use speck. Speck is an ingredient that I find a lot in Italy and a lot in the Mediterranean, and I cannot seem to find it at like even my specialty stores here. So speck is basically smoked pancetta, and pancetta is kind of like bacon, so you could use bacon in place of this. I'm going to be using this really chunky piece of ham that I found, a really smoked piece of ham. It was really, really thick. Since this is already cooked, I'm going to crisp this up and just get the oil a little bit infused in the smokiness, and I just want to add some crispy sear on the outside. And while that's searing, I already prepped the mushrooms. So I'm using just normal brown bella mushrooms. You could use portobello mushrooms. You could use a mix of really fun wild mushrooms. So mushrooms are such a sponge that you don't want to rinse them, even though they're covered in so much dirt. With a damp paper towel, brush off any of the dirt that you see. And so I'm going to take a really quick fine chop, because we are not blending this, so we want everything to be nice and small. And I'm going to cut the carrot about the same size. And lastly, I have a yellow onion here. I have the beautiful vegetables all chopped, ready to go. We have the mushrooms, the celery, the carrots, and the onion. And we have the ham so perfectly crisp. So now it's time to add all of that to the pot. It is time to check on the beautiful mushrooms that have been cooking in some white wine. And I don't want to overcook anything too much because we're still going to give it some time in the broth to cook. I'm going to go ahead and add in some smoked paprika and baharit just to go with the flavors of the lentils and barley that we'll be adding in just a minute. So 2 teaspoons of baharit and 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. So the spices have been added and we're going to give it another 5 or so minutes with the spices. I'm gonna go ahead and lower it down to simmer just to warm up those spices and get them infused with those vegetables. So let's talk about the lentils and the barley. So I have the leftover here and I'm gonna go ahead and give it a fresh little stir. You can smell the orange, you can smell the delicious spices. This is about 2 cups or so of the prepped, ready to go lentils and barley. I just tasted the carrots and the mushrooms, still al dente, cooked all the way through, but they're not mushy, they're not completely falling apart. So it is the perfect time to add the lentils. We're gonna give it like 3 minutes to warm up and let everybody say hello to each other, hug each other, say hi, welcome to the party. And then we're gonna add the vegetable broth. Let it simmer for another 10 or so minutes, but it's really ready. It comes together in 20 minutes. You basically just have to saute up the vegetables, add your prepped barley that are already all so dressed up with all of its flavor. You already added a ton of white wine and spices and hammy, smoky goodness to the mushrooms, the carrots, and the onions and the celery. So now we're just pulling everything together. It comes together so quickly. This is not the most beautiful, but the smell, I can't express how cozy this smells. So good. Everything's still very chewy. We have the chewy mushrooms and the carrots and the celery, and then the really chewy smoky ham, barley, lentils. And I love that because I love eating food. As much as I love the first recipe, which is so creamy, I love to eat. And this is my perfect, super hearty, definitely packed full of goodness meal. With the barley and the lentils, and then you get that protein from the ham. The mushrooms add even more meatiness. Like, this is a very meaty without being overly meaty, because if you don't want to, you don't have to include the ham. There's a lot of different things you could use instead of ham for that smokiness. Maybe add some fire roasted tomatoes if you wanted to add even more smokiness with keeping it vegetarian. This is so good. The depth of spices from the baharit and then the smoked paprika just add, it's like a hug. It's like eating a hug. One more big spoonful and then we'll move on to the third and final recipe. For the third and final soup, we are doing my favorite, comfort soup. I grew up eating minestrone. My nonna makes the best minestrone, and so that's what we're making today. Start off very similar to everything else. So I'm gonna go ahead and drench the bottom of this pan with about 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and we're going to crisp up some ham again. You could also use bacon, you could use sausage if you wanted to. You could keep it meat-free and not crisp up anything. I just really, really love the smokiness of the ham and the depth that it adds and the protein that it adds. Let's talk about the root vegetables. I have too many. I want to start over with like the produce that I have in my fridge for my next recipe video, so I really wanted to get rid of like everything that I got for my meal prep video and for this soup video. So I was trying to get rid of literally everything. So we got 2 sweet potatoes, turnips, some parsnips, yellow onion, fennel instead of celery, and it's just a load of root vegetables. You can use sunchokes. If you wanted to, you could use beets. You don't even have to use sweet potatoes. You could use any potatoes that you have. So much vegetables. If you don't have a yellow onion, you could use a red onion, you could use a shallot if you're trying to use up your onions. The secret ingredient to my grandmother's minestrone is when she goes to saute the vegetables, she sautés it with bouillon, or you know, their Italian version of bouillon, and I have like the perfect amount to just scrape this jar clean. And so that way you don't even have to use a broth. What I'm gonna be using instead of broth today is some crushed tomatoes. Once I add in this can of tomatoes, I'm gonna fill it all the way up with water and add that amount of water into. So 1 can of tomatoes, 1 can of water. Also with the sauteing of the vegetables, I'm going to add in lots of thyme. I don't have any, but what would be really helpful here is to get some twine and tie it all up together. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Bridget Jones' Diary, but she puts like purple twine around her thing and she makes like purple soup. It's so funny. I have this like slimy bag of kale. It's not slimy, I'm being dramatic. It's not thriving in my fridge anymore. Kale, and then I have half a bag here of some, oops, sad little Brussels that I'm gonna finally shred. So you're getting your root vegetables, you're getting your greens. And lastly, this would not be minestrone without vitellini. You can use any pasta you'd like that's tiny. I grew up eating vitellini. Add your favorite pasta. If you're keeping this vegetarian, vegan, add some white beans, some garbanzos, some cannellini, some navy beans, some kind of bean for some more protein, some more meatiness. You could also add some shredded chicken to this. I have a beautiful hunk here of Parmigiano Reggiano. It's the real stuff. We got the rind on it. Once I add in the water and the tomatoes, I'm gonna throw in the rind and just let it melt in there. After all the chopping, which takes like 20 minutes, and then it comes together in like 30 minutes. So it is actually a very quick and easy, simple meal. Give me a little spoon, a little bit of broth, a little bit of kale, ditalini, Brussels, no broth, really just all the things. Oh, it's piping hot. If you make one recipe, make it this one. Just every way, shape, and form, comfort food. The tomato sauce gets kind of thick from that Parmesan and the starch that comes off of the ditalini. What has to be my favorite thing about soups and stews is it makes so much. So while it's great for meal prep, it's also a reason to bring everyone to the table and everybody can just join and everyone can enjoy this together. It's so delicious. It's a comfort meal because it's also really meant to be shared, which is what the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle is all about. Everyone coming together and enjoying some delicious food. So call your loved ones, make some of these recipes. If you enjoyed any of these recipes, please leave a comment below which one you're most excited to try. I hope you try these recipes. I hope you found them helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you create a very, very zestful day. Ciao.